All right, so we have done quite a few plans in this region because that's kind of what we do. Planning is in our name. We've been doing this for many years, since the 1960s, and have been doing it in the three-county region since 1979. So I've made several presentations on this planning effort previously, and so with that said, I'm not here to kind of recast that all for you, but just to give you a very brief overview of how we got here today and what we are looking to approve come March. So we understand there are planning efforts that we have engaged in from the start. This is the 2010 Ped and Pedal Plan. It was a culmination of many plans that have been created by NERC since the early 70s. We first put out a bicycle route map in 1974. It was followed in 1990 by a trail plan, a bikeways plan in 94, the first Ped and Pedal plan in 05, and then the recent one, which is the one that is currently approved and we are working under in 2010. However, in 2007, this came along, the Greenways+Blueways plan. And this took a focus on areas of conservation, okay, open space, wetland protection, habitat, and wildlife protection and habitat as well. So we wanted to make sure that we updated this project as well. And of course, very significant out of the Greenways+Blueways plan was the first analysis of water trails in our region. We took a look at 15 routes in all, and I'm proud to say, probably thanks to that planning effort, we now have a very robust organization with Northwest Indiana Paddling, and very proud of the success that they've had in this region since this plan was brought about. Now the issue is, though, internally, what do we describe as a greenway? Now this is a very big definition, but just to concise it down, we understand a greenway comes in many flavors. Okay, a greenway can be passive, it can be active, okay, and it can support nature, it could support hydrological functions as well, bioswales, so it can be pretty much integrated throughout our entire land use spectrum, so to speak. And so we had kind of a conflict inside about how we're going to go about this. Are we going to be releasing 2 updates, or should we take a stab at really bringing this together and making sense of it all? Because this is what we do at NERC. You know, we have a very robust environmental department, and we've had one for the last 30 years. And of course, you know very well how environmental stewardship is treated in this region with the dunes and with all the ecological gems that we have scattered throughout. And of course, non-motorized transportation speaks for itself. Our trails have boomed over the last 20 to 30 years as well, and it continues to move along. So we decided to bring it together under one planning document under 3 major components, under conservation, recreation, and finally transportation. And you know, I'm a planner. I've been doing this work for now 20 years, and I know all of you out there have seen plans, you've read through plans, you've probably fallen asleep reading plans, I understand that. And a lot of them could be, as they say, cookie cutter, and you know, okay, here's another plan, and here we go, and I know where to go. But this was a very unique enterprise, trying to bring these 3, on the surface, very distinct initiatives together as an integrated package. So it's something that we've been somewhat wrestling with as a staff. We've been trying to work with all of you as peers in the public to have it make sense. And I believe we have hopefully reached, you know, that nadir, so to speak, with this project. So let's talk about the breakdown of the Greenways+Blueways 2020 plan. Again, it expands beyond the 2040 plan. Again, we have done work on the 2040, and this is kind of setting us up for our next planning effort, which is 2050. As you know, at NERC, that is our core document, the 2040 Regional Comprehensive Plan. We'll be updating it. Chapters are, again, divided by the main themes of conservation, recreation, transportation. We are providing an overview in these areas. Okay, we're trying to make this a document that is, again, attractive to the public, not detractive, so to speak. Nothing that someone in a high-level graduate program or a PhD would enjoy. Somebody that doesn't understand the planning lingo, they can embrace it, they can capture the vision, and then they can work at their own local levels to see it come about. So we're not getting into the details either. This is not a manual on how to do complete streets, on how to do safe routes to school, on how to adopt universal design standards. We provide links. Okay, we give you the inspiration, and then we basically say, go fetch. That's what the internet's all about, okay? We do have a data section. We did surveys throughout the region back in 2015. We have updated statistics from the trail counts in our region over the last couple of years. Of course, no plan would be complete without goals, objectives, policies, and performance measures, and those are in abundance at the back end of the plan. The data overview. 2 public surveys were launched in August of 2015, an online and intercepts. Intercepts are on-site interviews that were conducted by volunteers of South Shore Trails. These surveys did end in September of 15. We received 730 individual responses to the surveys. Those were 190 intercepts were part of that. The trail counts were conducted between May and October of 16. Now this is wrong. We actually have conducted it now between May of 2016 and December of last year. So we have updated those trail counts. My slide is wrong. Municipal surveys were issued in late 2005 with 32 overall responses. If you understand that number, that's very significant. We have 41 municipalities in Northwest Indiana. That's a great response rate, and we're very happy and very thankful for all those who came forward with their municipal surveys. Now, if this seems very redundant to you, it is. We came out last year with a release of the plan. We received significant comments to that plan, and it brought us back to the drawing table, so to speak. As I've been trying to explain time and again, we have many initiatives that we're balancing at once here at NERC, and unfortunately this kind of got caught in the jet stream and has brought us to this point today, finally, for the approval of the draft document, or at least for the public review of it. So we apologize for the delay, but it's one of those things that we want to get right and get it right the first time, or at least the first time after we adopt it. So let's go through the chapters in detail. Conservation is our first chapter. The core of our conservation chapter, again, we're pulling out elements that were very prevalent in the 2007 plan, but have also carried forward to this date, especially through our 2040 planning initiative. This is the green infrastructure vision that NERC has been working with several partners in the region for many years. The plan you see here, or at least what you're seeing here, you're talking about protected lands, you're talking about ecological networks that have been identified, municipal boundaries, and how that interrelates with the region, basically providing opportunities for us to expand our greenways network throughout the 3-county area. Now what we did with this, with overlay districts, is create 9 unique areas that can be utilized for possible investment in this region. And much like we have with our trail corridors, these are overlaid greenway corridors that we're going to hopefully focus on as we go forward with new initiatives in this region and hopefully leverage new financial incentives. So we call them conservation hotspots. The 9 in all include the Grand Calumet area of concern. And that, let me go back here, that is up here in the very corner of the region. The Indiana Dunes, I don't need to point that out. The moraine forest area, and I believe if you take a look here, number 3 is right here, this area here, the vertical area. That, of course, follows the Valparaiso moraine through our region. Hoosier Prairie, Oak Ridge Prairie, which are in Lake County. Obert Marsh and Deep River vicinity. Founders and Cedar Creek watersheds. Kingsbury, those are in the Cedar Lake Lowell area. Kingsbury area, which is out here in LaPorte County. Kankakee Marsh, and the Little Calumet River. So these 9 areas have now been brought forward as places that we can have some tangible analysis constructed, and again, hopefully future investment afforded to improving these areas for wildlife conservation, recreation, and of course transportation opportunities. Here's the great overlay map that we see the opportunities for conservation in the green for the most part. We see the trails that have been outlined in the red areas, and we see the blueways that have come forward with our riparian, our creeks, our ditches, our rivers, our lakes, and how that all plays together. Greenways are, again, important in the sense of linking our communities together, enhancing our overall quality of life, improving our wildlife habitat, and just helping our region overall to be a better place to live And that's what we're trying to bring together with this initiative. So let's talk about the goals. The goals are, again, in the document. There are several objectives that are associated with each of these goals. I'm not here to read them off to you in detail, so I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of what they are, and then we can, again, move forward with the rest of the presentation. Goal C1, C being conservation, of course. Encourage and promote preservation of natural and naturalized conservation corridors, protecting and linking our region's high-quality natural areas across the landscape. Okay. Goal number 2, increase public access to these natural ecological communities and conservation lands through conservation corridors. Again, that is what I brought up on that slide with the hotspots. And our third goal out of conservation, river and stream reaches within conservation focus areas, as well as regional riparian, local riparian, and priority blueways will have riparian conservation buffers. So we're protecting the stream beds and giving them an opportunity to remain healthy throughout this region. So those are our 3 major conservation goal initiatives. Moving on to recreation. Now, when we think about recreation in this region, we probably think of our off-road trails and, of course, our blueways. And you would be right. And this is a chapter that focuses exclusively on our growing network of greenways and blueways in the sense of land trails and water trails. We do an inventory on both of them. This is a table that puts together all of the major NERPC trails that are currently underway and in different forms of planning and development in our region overall. And you can tell we have the major ones up top here, and then we have the visionary corridors that encompass many of the local regional corridors. And of course, they are the Marquette Greenway and the American Discovery Trail. And we, of course, are in various states of development with these. Altogether, we have about nearly 100 miles. In fact, that number is going to be revised. We have over 100 miles of these major regional corridors that are created. The number that is currently we're playing with in the plan is about 160 miles of trail, period. And that includes the local systems. I mean, systems like the Wicker Park Trail in Highland is not located on here. That's because it's a localized system, but it's a 2.5-mile trail. Again, those are found throughout the entire region, so if you don't see your trail on here, don't get upset. We do account for them in other places in the plan, but we just want to make sure we brought out, of course, the core regional systems in the Northwest Indiana area. Of course, those are falling into the priority corridor areas. If you are a pedal and paddle junkie, this map is very familiar to you. It has been proposed, it has been modified, and has been enhanced for the last 15 years by this very committee. And it's been broken down into all sorts of lovely colors. The blue color being the color that is important in the sense of trail corridors that have either been funded or built in Northwest Indiana. And of course, based on the intensity of the color, the prioritization of that going forward. We have allocated probably $40 million, if not more, of local federal resources over the last 20 years to this corridor vision, and it is one of our most successful planning guides that we have in Northwest Indiana today, and has been enhanced with this planning effort. We have other initiatives too that we bring out in this particular section. We talk about our wayfinding signage program that is shown here on the top that will be guiding our new signage and our wayfinding policy going forward with all new trails that are funded by NERPC. These will be mandated in the projects that go forward that are on our priority corridors. The picture at the bottom is just a lovely idea that we had seen happen here in the town of Maryville. They took the initiative, they took a graffiti-strewn tunnel, and they put some artwork to it. And since then, it's remained such. It is known fact that graffiti people will stay away from this. This is not good for them. They kind of respect other artists, and they'll go to other blank palettes, so to speak. So we're hoping that we can take more and more tunnels throughout the region, and overpasses, underpasses, places where there's a lots of concrete, and we can incorporate local art and a local flavor into this region. And again, that is expressed quite well within the plan itself, and links are provided to get people up to speed. And now, Blueways. Blueways was a major success of our 2007 plan, and we have continued that forward, of course, through this planning effort. We identify many blueways that are in our region today. What we did, though, is that we worked exclusively with the Northwest Indiana Paddling Association. We basically just said, here, what do you think? Okay, we took the 2007 plan, put it in their lap and said, what do you think? And several of the creeks that were identified in the 2007 plan have been actually proposed to be removed off of the planning in going forward here for various number of reasons, dealing with water levels, dealing with just access to the water itself. And again, those are spelled out within the plan. Again, we're very sensitive about which waterways are going to be used for future use. But again, I think the ones that make sense, ones that we're still working on, Cedar Creek and Lowell being probably one of our top priorities, and a community that likes to see that done. But then there's other ones as well that have just kind of fallen by the wayside based on the fact that it's just not really a feasible option. So again, very thankful to NIPWA for making that happen for us. The back end of the recreation section has several of these charts that talk about people's preferences when they're on trails, both land and water. Okay, we talk about people's age, we talk about why they use the trails, how often they use the trails, how far they use the trails when they're on there. As you would guess, if you're on a bicycle or you're on an actual off-road trail, your primary use is bicycle, but if you take it in the whole, most people actually are either jogging or walking on a trail, so most people are actually pedestrians, or they're actually using their feet more than they're using their wheels, okay? And the reason that people are actually on off-road trails is primarily exercise and overall health. Now, water trails are a different story. Most people that use water trails are in kayaks, and we're getting more and more people that are actually using water trails in our region. Again, many thanks to NIPWA for making that happen through events and through outreach and education, and we just hope to continue that momentum forward. We did many trail count studies throughout the region. We have about 12, well, currently about 15 trail count boxes that have been installed. We're very subtle about their installation, obviously, but they're all throughout the region on our major trail systems. This gives you an idea of the breakdown of how all the trails play out to each other in our region. And it doesn't break down a particular trail in detail. These are all of them at one time. You're talking about the Erie-Lackawanna, the Oak Savannah, Prairie Duneland. You also have the Monon Trail that's on here as well. And I believe there is, well, those are the, yeah, and we have the Pensy Greenway that's also accounted for in this color wheel. And it gives you an idea of, again, where the counts are coming from, how many people are using in these different places. And something that is of curiosity to me, I did a recent presentation for another trail project, and we have a guy in our office named Scott Weber, and he loves math, and I'm glad he does because it scares me to death. And he was able to kind of find a formula out there how you can relate the people that are using the trail to the economic benefit of the town where the trail is located. And so that might be already a quick revision to our plan to kind of get that happening, to give you guys who are working with these initiatives some real numbers to work with your local official decision makers on. They love to see economic numbers, and I don't blame them. These are those boxes. We have 15 in the region. Again, that's the breakdown. And again, very discreet, and so far so good. And we've been able to keep them out year round. We have a gentleman, Terrell Waddell, in our office that goes around probably every 2 weeks and takes the counts of all these. For those in this room, I will do my PSA as well, and I know Hannon is on board with it, but, and Cheryl didn't make, I know that IPRA is going on this week, and I don't know, I always miss it. We moved the meeting up to the first week, and we're still getting hit by IPRA. That's why a lot of the park people aren't here. But even so, if you are interested in having a trail counter located on a system, it doesn't matter if it's a regional trail, if it's a local trail, we don't care. If you want a trail counter, let us know. We'll work with you on it. What we can do, we just simply ask you to purchase the counter itself. It's $400 per counter. And then there's some really odds and ends, such as the box and stuff. We'll put that together, but then we will make sure we go out there, we maintain it, and we collect the data from it. And then we get that back to you on a monthly basis, and so you can use that for your own local work. So keep that in mind, that that is a service that we offer. All right, moving on. Here are the goals from the recreation, a little less wordy than the conservation. The first one, encourage and promote regional coordination and planning and trail development. Promote the benefits of trails, doesn't get much more simpler than that. And our third goal, maintain funding priorities to allow for implementation of trails. Again, several objectives help buttress each of these goals as you're going through the document and, of course, carry these forward. The last major section is on transportation. Now, when we talk about the transportation matter here, it is about networking. It's all about networking. It's about creating a network that helps you get throughout your community and get you to other communities. Trails are fantastic. Trails are wonderful. They are our super highways in Northwest Indiana. But I know I take I-65 home every day. I need other roads to get to my home. They just can't go on. So the same thing with trails, okay? Trails are the same deal. And we need to create networks within communities to make that happen. That's what this chapter really unpacks and brings forward, okay? So it's a network thing. The planning goes into it, of course. We talk about making sure your community has a strong bicycle and pedestrian planning initiative. There are elements of the network. We're all familiar with these, with bike routes, pedestrian routes, intersections that are treated correctly, mid-block crossings, which are extremely important because we have this very stretched out suburbanized area, and there's a lot of distance between crossings, between stoplights, between stop signs. And if a person has to go too far, and there's not much to it, like 150 feet, they're jaywalking. Okay, it's just human nature. You're going to do it too. You've got to walk all the way there. You're just going to jaywalk. So we want to make sure we accommodate that in our communities. Traffic calming, bicycle parking, wayfinding, again, having correct signage in your community. Bicycle sharing, we're doing a great job with that in Miller and Valparaiso right now. And of course, universal design standards, making sure that everybody at all ages, at all abilities, have access to our society as a whole. And it's a broad goal, but it's one where it can be incorporated, and we highlight that in the plan as well. Keeping on about network, we also talk about maintenance being a very strong issue as well. A lot of communities are out there and they put the trail in and it's wonderful. They cut the ribbon, they go away, and then that's it. Now, most of you don't do that. Some communities have, and we have to keep on that maintenance is a big deal. Policy development, of course, that comes in these different categories: complete streets, safe routes to school, walk and bike friendly designations. We understand about the bike friendly designation, okay? Communities can have that designation, businesses can have that designation, universities. There's all sorts of opportunity. And the challenge still remains. There is yet not one community in Northwest Indiana that has been designated a bike-friendly community, okay? So I still put that gauntlet down. All right. Development siting, of course, making sure that it's a simple thing, especially when you deal with schools. Schools are an easy one. Don't plan your school miles away from where the kids are. Put it near where the kids are so they can walk and bike there, just as an example. Transit connections, of course, that's part of our network. Bike to work options, like this gentleman here, doesn't have to look scruffy at all. Regional oversight from NERC, and of course, working together with all of you as our peers to make this happen in our region. And let's talk about the goals from the transportation section. Our first one, encourage and promote regional coordination and planning in pedestrian and bicycle network development. The goal number 2, improve connections between sub-regional and interstate networks and destinations. Our third goal, encourage and increase bicycle pedestrian access to and from all transit and multimodal facilities. Our fourth, promote the benefits of bicycle and pedestrian networks. Of course, one of those objectives from this goal is our bike map, our bike and ped map, and paddle map for that matter. Maintain a set of funding priorities to allow for the implementation of a regional non-motorized transportation network, and we have done that quite successfully with this group. And our sixth goal, reduce ecological impacts of transportation networks through promotion and development of green infrastructure. The word infrastructure didn't make it to the slide. The deployment of green infrastructure. Okay. So let's talk about integration. We talk about these 3 different ingredients of conservation, recreation, transportation. Now integration begins. How do we bring them together? Primarily it's through a spectrum, to let people understand that this spectrum right here is how it all comes together. We have this spectrum from one end to the other. We have all of these uses that might seem that they don't interrelate, but they actually do in some fashion. We bring 3 different type of vision ideas to the forefront in the integration chapter that brings this to some clarity to make this work and make this more of a unified planning initiative throughout this entire spectrum of uses. We bring about the Greenways 8, in this case the return of the Greenways 8. The Greenways 8 were a series of 8 stakeholders right here that were brought to the forefront in the 2007 plan, and yet again we bring them to the forefront of the 2020 plan. Pretty much everybody lands in one of these categories, okay? You're all private property owner, so you can't get out of it that way. But all of us work for these different areas. We could be working for a local or county government, or like myself, a federal or a state, in this case a regional agency. You could be working for a college. You could be working for a corporation, you name it. Land trusts. We have very active, very robust land trusts in our region as well. They all play a role. This plan identifies these stakeholders and shows how they can be part of this integration. And that comes into the implementation chapter, okay? This is a series of tables that look like so, that break down all the goals that I have talked about. It identifies each objective, and each objective to each of those goals is then broken down into this matrix of different policy and activity items, okay? Where you have, in this case, we have one of the goals here from conservation, breaks down the objective, breaks down to the policy, and then the Greenways 8 are spread out through the entire policy and activity, and how that particular stakeholder plays a role with that particular objective. So you might be a developer, you might be a land trust, okay? Going through such a document, you may have a hard time figuring out how you can benefit or how you can play a role in the development of our Greenways and Blueways network. Well, here you go. We're doing our best to try to channelize focus in those particular areas, because we understand plans in general can be unwieldy. There can be lots of recommendations, lots of goals, and people's heads can start spinning. Like, how do I even start doing any of this? Well, we give you the ideas to go forward with, and we're hoping this will work out. We have it for conservation. Of course, it's all color-coded. We have recreation with green, we have transportation with red, and we break that down throughout the entire implementation section. And we're hoping that through this process, we'll be able to really start engaging with people at all 8 major stakeholder levels on advancing our Greenways and Blueways network for this region. And of course, improving our quality of life in the process. So what are our next steps? Again, we are in the draft phase. We have begun the public comment period. It is a 30-day public comment period. It is to conclude on March 2nd. We have open house will be on February 15th here at the NERC office. Okay, it'll go from 5 to 7 p.m. However, the plan itself is now on the NERC website. You go to nerc.org. Under transportation, you'll find the Greenways and Blueways section, and you'll find the plan in its entirety now downloaded on that site. We have a review by this committee and by the EMPC on March 1st, 1 month from today. More or less a blessing to move the plan forward. At that point, if everything is hunky-dory, and it depends of course upon the public comments that come forward, we'll bring it before the TPC and the Commission during their March meetings. As we experienced before, we could have comments coming forward that could delay this project. However, we have built in a very strong system at this time to get this out the door as soon as possible. So if it's not March, then we're hoping April at the very latest. And to address those concerns that come up during the comment period, and to make sure that we do all of our due diligence to make sure it's a plan that we all can accept and move forward with. And with that said, I thank you for your time and for your attention. And I will now take questions if there are any to be